And aloha, my YouTube audience. For some reason, even though it's time for my show to be starting, I have not been able to connect with Republic Broadcasting, or to be more accurate, they have not connected with me. And so I have absolutely no idea what's going on. And maybe they took the day off and they're doing a rebroadcast. But all right, I'm going to start talking, and hopefully they will not be too much later in joining with us, as it were. And just making sure I didn't get any text messages from them. Oh, there he is. All righty, here we go. And okay, there we are. So we're connected now. We're on the air. Welcome to our show. It's Friday, October 12th, 2018. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. And we have got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And of course, this being a Friday, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us in hour number 3. So let's get right on into it. Senator Rand Paul is continuing to sound the alarm about the current political climate here in the United States, where the Democrats more and more are resorting to violence because they've run out of any rational arguments for their positions about things like letting the men use the ladies' room and so forth. So apparently Rand Paul was doing an interview at a Kentucky radio station. He's concerned that if the rhetoric is not toned down, it could lead to an assassination. Now, Rand Paul has revealed that the man who opened fire on Republican lawmakers during a congressional baseball practice in Alexandria, Virginia last year shouted, "This is for health care." Meaning, yes, it was a politically motivated shooting, which I think would qualify it as an act of terror. But it is getting violent out there. The other day, of course, we had that video of a pro-life woman being roundhouse kicked by a pro-choice man, and it's happened again. There's another pro-life woman who was assaulted by a pro-abortion woman, got into a shoving match. That was caught on multiple cameras here. And there's another video that's out there where apparently there was a conservative commentator, part of the independent media, I presume, who was trying to basically report on the protest around her. And this liberal gentleman came on up and basically just thumped her on the chest, and she said, "Don't touch me." And he proceeded to touch her again and say, if you don't back off, I'll throw you on the ground and rape you. And they got this guy away from the girl. But here's the thing. The feminists around him, who have been shouting, "We're supposed to believe women," defended this guy. They denied he touched her even though it was on video. They denied that he said he was going to rape her even though it's on video. And by the way, if we're supposed to believe women, how about all those women who came forward and said Kavanaugh was innocent? Why was nobody out there saying we have to believe them? It's a very ad hoc philosophy. If it's a conservative man, yes, he's guilty, and everybody else. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has unloaded on Eric Holder's call for violence. And again, Holder was dancing right on the edge of a call for violence. But the problem is how people listening to him perceive his words. Because people in the crowd were chanting, "Fight, fight, fight," when he said, "When Republicans go low, we kick them." Now, Eric Holder is backpedaling and saying, obviously, he didn't intend to promote violence. But the effects of rhetoric like that can affect, shall we say, the impressionable liberal mind. And we do need to be very, very careful about that. Okay. Now, getting on back here. Yeah, you can make a comment like that off the cuff, and somebody out there who's already on the edge, as so many liberals are, could say, yes, the time has come. The time has come. Okay, we're coming up on the midterm elections, a little over 3 weeks away. Both sides are proclaiming they shall be victorious. Everybody lies about it going on in. Everybody has polls to back up the fact that they're winning. So we have half the polls are showing the Democrats are going to have their blue wave. We have the other half of the polls are showing there's going to be a red wave. But there was an article coming out of RestoreAmericanGlory.com reminding us all about the arrogance displayed by the Democrats back in 2015 and 2016 when they were out there saying, yes, it's going to be Hillary. It's going to be Hillary Clinton. And, you know, Trump's going to go nowhere. He doesn't have a chance at the nomination, let alone the White House. And so are we seeing the same kind of denial going on in the Democratic establishment right now? Because if they fail, if the Democrats fail to take the House of Representatives in this election, that's going to be their second election shock in a row. What's really important for you and I and all of Rivero's Rangers to do right now is to mobilize the conservative vote over the next 3 weeks and just say, look at how these liberal politicians behaved in the Kavanaugh hearings. Do you want them in charge of the House of Representatives? Most people, I think, are going to say, heck no, these people are crazy. It's Looney Tunes out there. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And by the way, politics is dirty. We've talked about it before. Sometimes it gets really, really sleazy. Okay, so apparently there's this Senator Bill Nelson. He's a Democrat from Florida. He's fighting to keep his seat against surging Florida Governor Rick Scott, who is a Republican. So Bill Nelson ran a hurricane relief ad with a link, please donate. But the donate link went to his campaign website. So people were being tricked. They thought they were donating for hurricane relief. And I imagine a lot of money came on in for that. And instead they were donating to his campaign. That's how sleazy the whole process has become. Over in Texas, Michael Avenatti, who's Stormy Daniels' lawyer, who has said he wants to run in 2020 for president on the basis of being a porn lawyer. He's apparently trying to cash in on the Democrats' obsession with beating Ted Cruz in Texas. Now, ostensibly, he's raising money for Democrat darling Beto O'Rourke, but apparently supporters of the Texas Democrat found out Avenatti was skimming money off the top for his own political action committee. Over at the Senate Judiciary Committee, they've received a sworn statement under oath confirming that Christine Blasey Ford coached people on how to pass polygraph examinations. So she knows how to do it. And of course, her entire case against Kavanaugh, the feminists' entire case against Kavanaugh was, well, she passed a polygraph. She must be telling the truth. She passed a polygraph. Ted Bundy passed his polygraph when he said he was innocent. Polygraphs are not reliable. That's why they're not admissible as evidence in a court of law. They're used for investigative purposes, and they work really well on people who believe that polygraphs work. But for people who think it's a lot of nonsense, no. So Ford lied under oath. But nothing's probably going to happen to her here. Okay. Apparently a hearing is being held right now in U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C., to address the request from Judicial Watch for Hillary Clinton, longtime top aide Cheryl Mills, and other current or former State Department officials to testify under oath. Now, this has to do with two different issues. One, of course, is the exposure of highly classified information on Hillary's private email server, which had no real security. The other issue is Judicial Watch wants them to address how the department responded to its Freedom of Information Act lawsuit seeking information about the 2012 attacks on the Benghazi consulate. So they're going to be looking into that one as well. The co-founder of Fusion GPS, which was the research firm behind the Christopher Steele dossier, Glenn Simpson, is going to invoke his Fifth Amendment privileges to avoid testifying before Congress next week. His lawyer just announced to Congress, you know, he'll show up, he'll sit in the chair, he's just going to say Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, which of course is this flashing neon sign glued to his forehead saying guilty, 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 guilty. So, dirty business out there. Alrighty, let's turn to the war zones. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated that Russia is of the opinion that the United States government is keeping the area east of the Euphrates in Syria under turmoil, so that no one can be certain of what happens next, and their ultimate goal is to create a quasi-state east of the Euphrates, possibly a forerunner to the new Kurdistan, which was on the agenda from the start of the Syrian war 7 years ago. So the U.S. probably is not going to get Assad's permission to do that. But then the United States doesn't care about Assad's permission, or they would not be in Syria to begin with. Down in Yemen, it looks like the Houthis are changing their approach to the war with Saudi Arabia. As you know, the other day they destroyed a Saudi ship with a domestically produced missile for which there are no details available. But apparently it was able to destroy the ship and kill everybody on board, and the ship was in the process of shelling residential districts. So Yemen's military is getting more aggressive. They've stopped playing defense. They're going on the offense, and they've captured Saudi military sites in Jizan. And so the media branch of Yemen's Ansar Allah military released footages on Friday showing the moment that strategic Saudi military locations were captured in the eastern Al Dud Mountains and Al Raqqa military bases deep inside of Saudi Arabia itself. Yemen's army launched 2 ballistic missiles at a gathering of Saudi military forces, including mercenaries. A group of Saudi-allied mercenaries south of Al-Koba was also targeted. Later in the day, Yemen's army struck a Saudi military base in the kingdom's Jizan region with 2 ballistic missiles, killing a number of Saudi soldiers. Now, of course, Israel's out there screaming, Iran is supplying these missiles. This is all Iran's fault. Iran should go away. It's important to understand, Yemen is producing these rockets themselves. They're domestically produced. They're Iranian missiles, Saddam's nukes. Just make that linkage right there. Now, everybody's making a big deal over this death of Jamal Khashoggi, and it's beginning to look like he really might be dead, and the story that he'd been flown out and imprisoned in Saudi Arabia may have been fake news. What was missing from the story yesterday was how anybody would know what happened, because all that was available was the security footage of him walking into the consulate under his own power and then never, ever coming out. Well, Turkey has now basically claimed they have the consulate bugged, and as a result, they have audio that proves that Khashoggi was tortured, killed, and then dismembered to be smuggled out of the building. Now, the audio has not been made available because Turkey says that would allow Saudi Arabia to locate where the listening devices are located. And maybe that's true and maybe that's false. But I'm wondering, at a time when the United States needs Saudi Arabia support in the region, both for Yemen and Iran, that they're making a big deal out of this. And of course, I'm not trying to condone torture and murder, but it's become a disproportionately visible case compared to everything else that's going on in the region here. Now, there's another story. This one basically came out saying that the Saudi journalist wore an Apple Watch that recorded his own murder in the Saudi embassy. This, I think, is more fake news, because if they didn't get the body back, they didn't get the watch. Unless somebody was listening through the watch, which is entirely possible. Maybe that's how Turkey got the audio. And now they want to drive the Saudis crazy, tearing the inside of the consulate apart, looking for all the microphones that aren't there. But this story is having an impact. Companies and media are pulling out of a Saudi-sponsored event, and apparently it is having a pushback. There was this major event to be held by the Saudis on October 23rd and 25th, the Future Investment Initiative. And President of the World Bank, Jim Yong Kim, will not be attending the conference, according to sources within the organization. The change of plans was supposedly made due to a scheduling conflict with the event's timing. They're not saying it's connected to the missing journalist. That seems to be an assumption of the person who wrote the headline. More media spin here. Now, here's a question that's being asked. This is over at therealnews.com. Will the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi bring down the U.S.-Saudi alliance? This is coming from James M. Dorsey, and he's saying that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has suffered significant reputational damage on the eve of a major global trade conference. Well, maybe this story is being blown up out of proportion to sabotage that trade conference, because the United States wants all trade to go through U.S.-denominated assets. And if Saudi Arabia is becoming a major trade hub in the Middle East, that weakens U.S. influence in the region. But my analysis is that this event will have little effect, if at all, on the relations between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, which are built mostly on oil, money, weapons, and wars against Yemen and Iran. So this is going to blow on over. They're going to make the appropriate noise about it now, but nothing major is going to change. Over at truthnews.com, we're seeing another indicator that, having been driven to a stalemate in Syria, that the United States is shifting its emphasis back up to Ukraine as a location to start a conflict against Russia, World War III. And the United States government is now treating Ukraine as if it were a NATO member. And on September 27th, they donated to Ukraine 2 warships for use against Russia. So they're getting serious up there. Meanwhile, Trident Juncture 2018 is about to kick off. This is NATO's big war games right near the Russian border. And it seems these days there's always a war game by NATO up against the Russian border. It's going constantly. Now, in this case, Russia has been invited to send observers to watch the exercise. Basically, I think the goal here is to impress the Russians with the weapons and the maneuverability and the tactics, to basically try and scare them and say, ooh, this is a really potent military force. And we'll see if that's going to have an impact or not. Meanwhile, Russia has responded by holding a full-on test of its nuclear Trident. No nuclear detonations, but all the systems were tested: submarine launch, air launch missile, all of it. We're going to take a break for commercials. We've got a caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back.
The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights limits the government's power by ensuring freedom of speech and preserving the rights of the people. Every day that passes, our rights gradually slip away. It's time to take a stand and let the government know we're tired of losing our rights. LibertyStickers.com will allow you to express your rights and allow millions of people to see you stand up for what you believe in. LibertyStickers.com carries the largest selection of bumper stickers online, ranging from political to humorous, and is your #1 source for Ron Paul for President stickers. As always, you can find your favorite stickers that protest the war and the president. Don't see what you're looking for? Liberty Stickers will custom make stickers that will let you get your message across for all Americans to see. Go to LibertyStickers.com and see pre-made stickers that will get everyone talking. That's LibertyStickers.com or call 877-873-9626. Liberty Stickers, the world's most dangerous stickers.
Attention RBN listeners. Dr. Ignatius Piazza, founder of Front Sight Firearms Training, and Fate have come together to allow RBN to run another fundraiser till the end of the year. We didn't really expect this opportunity, but thankfully it's here and running as you hear this. We've set a goal of 500 donations by the end of the year, which averages around 6 per day, 7 days a week. When you realize all the folks listening to RBN all hours of the day and night, we think our goal is realistic and extremely critical to keep RBN on the air. If everybody listening will seriously assess their ability with firearms and then take advantage of this opportunity, we feel our goal is very conservative. Please take the time to look over Front Sight's website to get an idea of an amazing facility and the world-class training that's going on there. If this interests you, you likely will have like-minded friends that would like to know. Tell them. If for some reason some listeners are not personally interested, consider sons and daughters, close friends, nieces or nephews, top valued employees, inform club members, share the opportunity with police and fire departments. It's not too early to plan Christmas presents for special people. This fundraiser has come at an extremely critical time for RBN because the dire need for equipment upgrades. We're running on the spare tire currently with no money to fix a flat, and the fuel gauge is bouncing on E. This is one of the most valuable ways you can help RBN financially because you get Commander lifetime membership value that is 50 times your donation and can be passed on forever. How many times during life do you get to leave a legacy? See more details and contact info on our webpage, republicbroadcasting.org, and thank you.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're going to go to the telephones now. Bob in Florida. Aloha, Bob. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
What up, Mike? It's Bob Tuscan. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
So as you know, for better or for worse, many activists, including myself, have utilized Facebook to get the word out on compelling and important issues that otherwise have been censored by the mainstream media. And again, we're not too proud of having to work within the confines of their system. However, it's a necessary evil, arguably. So we built these pages. One page belonged to me, Free Your Mind Conference. The conference we do had over 80,000 likes, and several other pages that I work with, the Free Thought Project, a website that has brought forth police accountability with over 2 million likes, and so on and so forth. A long list of these sites doing good work, taken out with seemingly a click of a button, gone, wiped, clean, called, removed. One of the most remarkable days, perhaps, in recent history of censorship and nobody's talking about it. They all talked about Alex Jones, of course, when what happened to him happened. But of course, whether you love him or hate him, it seems that has now that way for a precedent to come after the rest of the alternative media, trying to utilize these popular platforms to preach beyond the choir. So I'm sure you've heard this by now, and I just wanted to give the insight from someone who has seen it firsthand. Facebook did publish a memo on the issue stating that they were going after spammers and whatnot. No chance in hell that these sites were all spamming. We know what they were presenting. There was a clear track record of good content that was being released by all of the aforementioned pages. However, it was obviously not the content they wanted, not the content that supported the paradigm. So as a result, there was an obvious effort. And even within Facebook's own memo, you might find this compelling, Mike, they stated very clearly that the timing of this was done in correlation to the midterms coming up. Now, many of these pages could care less about. Yeah, they even admit it. Yeah, isn't that compelling? I mean, they say it right there that this was done right in line with the midterms coming up. So, it was expected. I'm not trying to come off as shocked, obviously, and it is par for the course. But it doesn't take away just how crazy of an Orwellian society we live in right now. And for whatever reason, it still shocks me.
I think probably the reason for the shock is because if you're like me, you grew up in this country, you have a certain expectation of how things are supposed to work, including that First Amendment, and it's all being taken away. And it's like being a small child and growing up and all of a sudden realizing you have abusive parents. And you didn't really realize it until
even from
now.
a private enterprise perspective, you would think that it makes good business sense to allow folks, whether their opinion is obscure and conspiracy related or whatever you want to call it, you would think that from a business perspective, they would like those folks contributing to the platform, using it, because that all equates to ad dollars. So it not only defies the notion of having freedom of speech, but it defies business logic in many regards as well.
Well, first of all, we know that top management of all of these platforms are strongly liberal, and we cannot discard the possibility that they've all been offered a deal. That if they help the Democrats take back Congress and then in 2020 the White House, that there will be some kind of legislation passed that will basically lock them into the position of being the social media. Because you're right, it's bad business sense. They're losing money. They're also losing users who are going over to the new startup social media companies, and they're drawing a huge audience. And DuckDuckGo as a search engine is really taking off. People are understanding censorship is wrong, especially censorship that targets one political point of view only, which is very clearly being demonstrated here. So I sympathize with what you're going through. Fortunately, I quit using corporate social media almost a year ago now, so they're not going to bother me. I do my outreach through the radio show, through this website, and probably a lot of us ought to start building mailing lists. I haven't done it to date, but I'm starting to think it's time to build a mailing list. Unfortunately, we only have 3 weeks until the midterm, so the damage is done as far as that election is concerned.
Yeah, well, as far as the election is concerned, I hate to think that this is a bipartisan ploy to sway the elections, because most of these pages that were taken down, Mike, were not contributing one way or another to the left-right paradigm election system. I mean, although these pages were freedom-oriented, they're not necessarily pages that, in my eyes, would sway the election one way or another. So there's got to be a bigger agenda here beyond the election.
I'm sure there may be. Listen, Bob, I'm going to put you on hold. I want to keep on talking to you, so stay on the line. We'll come right back to you after these words from our sponsors.
are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds, up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AROutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
Well, they're stealing down on Wall Street and in Washington, too. You know, it makes me wonder, what's a guy on Main Street to do? I've always tried to be an honest, upstanding kind of guy. But I must admit lately, I thought about giving something else a try. Oh, I want to be a pirate. I want to sail the seven seas, yeah, I want to be a pirate.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Bob in Florida about the very blatant censorship of the corporate-owned social media, deplatforming sites all over the place. And Bob, you were saying that there may be a larger agenda, and there definitely is, because a lot of this is being encouraged and even funded by George Soros, because many of these web pages being taken down were arguing against, for example, open borders or globalism. And Soros is out there with his cronies saying, no, 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 you will think the way we want you to think. A one world government will be an absolutely beautiful thing. And I'm certain for the money junkies it will be. But we can clearly see the larger a government gets, the more abusive it becomes.
And it's being done so systematically, the censorship that is. When you look at the analogy of a frog being placed in a boiling pot of water, if you put it in when that water is too hot and boiling already, the frog might jump out. But what they're doing is they're slowly coming after us, and it's been an incremental approach where that water's slowly warming, and before we all know it, perhaps we're already there, we are boiling in complete Orwellian censorship.
We are frog soup.
And we are frog soup. Have you ever had, you eat frog legs? Ever have it?
When I was a kid, yeah.
Not bad. Not bad. You fry them, and in the South they love them. I've had buffalo frog legs, like a chicken wing, but with on a frog. Anyways.
Okay, we're not going to deteriorate into a cooking show here.
We can't? No? All right. Fair enough. Well, okay. So, I mean, I could talk. See, honestly, when I'm not worried about saving the planet, I much rather have a talk about good food, right? Because ultimately, what are we fighting for here? We're fighting for freedom. We're fighting for a life where we can actually kick back and not have to worry about tyranny, jumping all over our rights and so on and so forth, where we can afford to eat a good meal with a system that's not usurious from the very get-go and so on and so forth. So
no, I agree. I agree. If we could get this nation back to what it was like, decades ago, out of the hands of the fascists, I'd be glad to give up the website and the radio show and spend the rest of my life as Claire's roadie, because after going on a quarter of a century of the website and more than 10 years of the radio, I can't honestly say I'm having fun. But as long as it's necessary, I'm going to keep on doing it.
I'm with you. It's a necessary thing we need to continue to do out of necessity. I have a now 6-year-old. Who would have thought that all along I've been taking on this battle for not just him but his children and his children's children, because ultimately what they're doing right now will have long-standing implications from now on. Now, one way in which they've controlled us is by limiting the platforms that are popularly used. So back in the day, it used to be just the TV, right? So people would get their news from the TV, and that was a really good way to contain people and compartmentalize the information that's given to the mass. Well, then this whole internet thing came out, and it threw a kind of a wrench into the whole situation, where now people could openly disseminate information of all sorts. So at first they said, well, let's just take this approach. Let's just throw everything at it. So as much fluff and junk, let's just saturate it with nonsense.
Yes.
So that people could not possibly find the diamond in the rough, the needle in the haystack sort of thing. And let's just do everything we can, put every sort of piece of programming on there to distract them so that they use this technology, this Pandora's box, for the same old brainwash and mind control. Well, unfortunately, that only worked for so long because eventually people started to utilize it for good. They started to really realize that they could reach the masses putting out information that is taboo according to the powers that shouldn't be. And that was sexy. That was exciting. That was actually popular on the internet. People wanted that. Turns out they were thirsty for it.
Yes.
And exponentially, overnight, we saw a major rise in people speaking truth, utilizing these Orwellian platforms. And at some point, I think in the not too distant history, they decided, you know what, enough is enough. They first came after Skype. Skype had chat rooms that were used for people to connect all around the world. They were Skypecast is what they were called, and this was before when Skype was theoretically encrypted properly and not open up to a huge backdoor with Microsoft and so on. And since then, they've cracked down on every single little piece of the internet where, unfortunately, the market cap is completely consumed with the people outside of our little niche. And if we had any hope to speak outside the choir, that was it. And now it's being completely squashed, which is scary. It really is.
Well, we need to find new ways of getting on out there. And like I said,
How are we doing it?
where we can go back to mailing lists. I mean, you know, the Soviet citizens brought down their government with nothing more than fax machines. So we just have to get creative. And again, a big part of it is finding ways to lure users away from Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Google and get them onto these new up-and-coming social media platforms, and then be prepared for when they get compromised.
The new platforms, Mike, I don't think they can possibly conceivably reach critical mass with anything beyond just the choir. Not going to happen.
Well, I'm looking at the numbers for some of these, and they're pretty good. So perhaps I'm being a little bit more optimistic than you are. But the other side of it, of course, is we're seeing the U.S. government, the corporatocracy, if you will, they're showing all the signs of a Soviet Union-style collapse. There are so many parallels between our current government and the Soviet Union just before it collapsed, not to mention our government and the Roman Empire just before it collapsed. Too much debt, too much overextension of the military, unable to repair their own infrastructure. The parallels are definitely there. And everyone says there's a big economic crash coming. Apparently, they managed to evade it again today, barely. But I think that would be the best option for everybody on Earth, is for this whole system to come crashing down.
With that being said, then let's go back to my food stuff. I love food. I'm a farmer. I'm growing my own food. I got fruit trees. I'm saving seeds, all that good stuff. Maybe if we want to disseminate information, we should start putting out packets of food, rations of food with this whole Soviet collapse we're going to have, with little booklets in them so you can get a meal, because at some point, that's really when we will see people desperate for a revolution. When they're hungry, and I hope that time never comes, they're going to desperately seek out the truth and want a revolution at that point. So we shall see.
Well, we shall see, and thank you very much for the phone call, Bob. We're going to let you go here. I don't want to see a revolution or a civil war in this country. I understand a lot of people think that may be our only option. Obviously, I disagree. But again, I keep thinking back to Gandhi and his comment about tyrants. For a while, they can seem invincible, but in the end, they always fall. And I think that's where we are right now. I think if the U.S. government were to collapse the way the Soviet Union did, the rest of the world would breathe a huge sigh of relief, and they'd back off all this nonsense about wars and just say, let's go back to peace through commerce. You know, what are you selling that I want to buy? What are we selling that you want to buy? Let's do some business and just sit down and relax. Okay? By the way, story that just now came on in. Apparently, in Manhattan, there's an institution called the Metropolitan Republican Club. Last night, it was vandalized. And apparently, the Republican Club was planning to have an event today, and Antifa was trying to shut down that event. So right now it looks like it was probably Antifa that did this. According to one official, members of Antifa harassed the online ticket vendor Eventbrite, which the GOP Metropolitan Club used to sell tickets for the McInnes event at their headquarters. And so I bring this up because I look at what was going on in Germany before World War II really got going, with the physical attacks on opposition political parties, the brown shirt tactics, the shattered store windows. We're seeing it all happen all over again right here in the United States of America. And that is something I never, when I was young, never thought I would see this country descend to. We have become that which we were told we were opposed to decades ago. So getting on back to the international news, Moscow has approached the United States to make written commitments to not interfere in each other's affairs. And Moscow said they're ready to give such guarantees at any time, but Washington, D.C. has just categorically rejected the idea, because after all, interfering in other countries' business, that's what we do. That's what we're all about. That's what makes the United States of America great, is we mess around with other people's countries. A lot more attention is coming to bear on this Richard Lugar lab, and it's located in Georgia, what used to be Russian Georgia. An increasing number of people are concerned that it is obviously not a public health facility as claimed, but a biological warfare lab. Apparently 2 floors of the building are run by the United States military, and it's basically the United States has outsourced its gray zone research. If the United States is engaged in research that violates a treaty, they tend to want to hide it in other places. And apparently the Caucasus region is an ideal location for the United States to do this because a lot of very dangerous viruses and bacteria for weaponization occur naturally in the region. So you can just walk outdoors with a sample jar and grab something, bring it back in and say, this is rather nasty. How can we turn it into a weapon? So apparently the United States has convinced the U.S. corporate media not to talk about this because it is a treaty violation. Over in Korea, the U.S. nuclear-powered warship, the USS Ronald Reagan, has joined the South Korean naval fleet for a once-in-a-decade international fleet review in waters off the southern island of Jeju. This despite the ongoing talks with the North, which will probably see this as a provocation. Meanwhile, Australia is sending a guided missile frigate to the East China Sea to enforce the sanctions against North Korea. So it's getting ugly. Moon Jae-in has now stepped on in, asking the United States of America to formally declare an end of war with North Korea. Now, North and South Korea have, for all intents and purposes, already ended the war. Their militaries are cooperating. They're starting to demine the DMZ. They're opening up the rails and bridges. The only one keeping the war going is the United States. And of course, they want it to keep going. They profit from turmoil. They keep control over divided areas. If the entire world all of a sudden woke up tomorrow morning and found itself at peace, the United States would collapse. Economically, politically, they wouldn't have an enemy to wag at the people. They wouldn't have countries buying our weapons. And you'd be surprised how much of a major part of our economy is geared up into the defense business, the military-industrial complex. Now, South Korea had been talking about wanting to lift some of its sanctions against North Korea, and apparently they have backed down following President Trump's blunt retort that South Korea could do nothing without Washington's approval. So apparently South Korea is backing off on that, easing sanctions on the North. And once again, we're seeing that Donald Trump doesn't want a peaceful resolution to what's going on. He wants to go on out and continue to be this international bully and have his way. I do not like his foreign policy. I think it's very dangerous. I really, really do. Down in Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro has accused the Trump administration of seeking to assassinate him. Now, remember, it was only a month ago we were hearing talk about an outright U.S. military intervention into Venezuela. And we are spread out all over the world right now. And you have to wonder, how are we going to do it? And I want to refer back to two stories we talked about yesterday. One said that U.S. Sea Lift Command, which are the military shipping infrastructure, they don't have enough ships to rapidly move enough tanks and artillery and other supplies to Europe to start a war with Russia. America's shipbuilding industry can't build more ships quickly. The U.S. Navy doesn't have enough ships to even escort those convoys. So how are we going to get all of this equipment down to Venezuela as well? We're pushing from a very weak position. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354, or visit MIG911.com.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. You will hear this offer only on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
Many people write about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. My wife and I both use Extendivite and are very pleased with the results. It has helped to stabilize our blood pressure and to make both of us feel healthier. Good product and good buy. So far, so good. I've been taking Extendivite 3 times a day, only a short while now, but already I've noticed the circulation in my hands and feet improving. They tingle. I like the idea of taking something herbal rather than pills. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think this supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite. We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, over in Israel, They are expressing their ire over the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, known as UNESCO, because UNESCO has adopted resolutions dedicated to preserving the Palestinian heritage, to preserve their history and records of their culture. And of course, Israel's attitude is there never was a Palestine. There's no such thing as a Palestine. People made it up to express their hatred of the Jews and their anti-Semitism, blah, 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 blah. By the way, there's actually a scan floating around the net of a postcard from Golda Meir, and the address reads Palestine. So Israel's ambassador basically came out with a statement saying this is additional proof for those who don't understand why the United States and Israel withdrew from UNESCO. This proves once again that UNESCO is a body based on lies, biases, and deliberate action against us. Israel will not be a member of an organization that's trying to rewrite history, because after all, that's Israel's job. That's what they're trying to do, rewrite history, to say there never was a Palestine. Remember the huge lie when Israel was being founded, a land for a land without a people for a people without a land. That was the slogan. So they're very upset. But yes, there is a Palestinian heritage and a culture, and again, if you look at my Israel Palestine, the maps tell the story, and I will repost it next commercial break. There's all these maps that go back to early Renaissance, even before that, showing Palestine, 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 and pictures of their cities, their people. The Palestinians were world famous for their fine embroidery. And there had been this traveling exhibition of modern-day Palestinian embroidery that was touring the world. And somehow it mysteriously disappeared from a locked warehouse at the Los Angeles International Airport and was never seen again. Story coming out of Information Clearinghouse. There's a new Pentagon report which points to U.S. preparations for a real, honest-to-goodness shooting war with Russia. On October 3rd, the United States threatened, for the first time since the Cold War, to directly attack the Russian homeland. UN Ambassador to NATO Kay Bailey Hutchison accused the country of violating the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty by developing a nuclear cruise missile, and said that Washington was preparing to take out the weapon with a U.S. strike. And by the way, the United States is in violation of the INF Treaty. And that statement came just 3 days after there was a near collision between a Chinese warship and a U.S. destroyer in the South China Sea. And there was that other official who came on out and said that the U.S. was prepared to blockade Russia to prevent Russia from selling its oil to people that we want to buy U.S. oil. Okay, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsite.com to make it happen. You will hear this offer only on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And before the station identification, we were talking about this very obvious war talk coming out of the United States directed at Russia and China. And again, I want to go back and point out some realities that should be included in the decision-making process about whether to actually move forward with this or not. Yesterday, we reported on how Defense News, which is basically a website within the defense industry itself, came on out and said Sealift Command, which is in charge of shipping war materiel into the war zones, does not have enough ships to rapidly transport the number of tanks and missiles and artillery to Europe that would be needed if there was a sudden outbreak of war. And even worse, does not have enough ships to continue to sustain the troops over there in Europe in the event of a prolonged war. And America's shipbuilding industry is nowhere near what it was in World War II. So we don't even have the means with which to rapidly build up that fleet. Then there was that second article in Defense News as well, where the U.S. Navy doesn't have as many ships as they used to. And the ships that it does have are basically committed to being engaged in combat or at least sneering at other country operations, and that there would be very few, if any, to protect the convoys that were going across the Atlantic. Again, amateurs discuss strategy and tactics in war. The professionals talk about the logistics. Getting the supplies you need to those who need them, or you lose. That's basically it. And then we're also talking about the terrible state of our weapons. I mean, the older weapons are all worn out. We've had 17 years of war, longer than World War I and World War II put together. The new weapons that are coming on out keep turning out to be highly overpriced junk. And they may not perform the way they're advertised. The latest concern, of course, being that our much vaunted stealth aircraft may not be as stealthy as thought. Now, you need to remember some months ago, one of Israel's F-35s did get hit. Israel insists it was a bird strike or something like that. Syria insists they got a lock on it and shot it. But can you imagine, we're not really going to know what's going on between the S-300 and the F-35 until there is an actual encounter, engagement. But can you imagine what Russia and Syria must be thinking? All they need to do is shoot just one of those planes down, and it destroys the aircraft's reputation, and with it, a huge portion of military sales for the United States. So I think they're going to be working really, really hard to get one of those planes down. Not just so that it isn't bombing their country, which is always a good idea to prevent from happening, but the reputational damage to the aircraft, the loss of sales, and the realization by countries already committed to the F-35 that they've been sold a bill of goods. Now, do you remember Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson? He's a former Bush official, and he's gone public condemning the military-industrial complex, saying, "We are the death merchant of the world." And he's saying the military-industrial complex has become much more pernicious than Eisenhower even dreamed of. And Wilkerson is tired of corporate interests that we go abroad to slay monsters for. Remember back in 2011, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was saying it's time for the United States to start thinking of Iraq as a business opportunity for U.S. corporations. So maybe that's why our foreign policy is so disjointed. It's been privatized. It's being directed by corporate interests. Oh, we need to go into Afghanistan for an oil pipeline. Oh, we need to go into Syria to prevent them from or to get them to build a pipeline for Israel to Europe. We need to go into Iraq to force them to sell oil for the U.S. dollar. It's all being driven by moneyed interests here. Now, getting on back to our much beleaguered F-35, other nations around the world have followed the U.S. example. They've grounded their entire F-35 fighter jet fleet. They're all on the ground right now in Britain, even in Israel, to find out what's going on with that engine that's in there. And they're trying to downplay it and say, well, it's probably just a matter of tubes and we can replace the parts. But if there is a fundamental flaw with the engine, that could be a serious and costly problem. And if you're a military historian, you probably remember back to the development of the F-14 Tomcat, which was one of the few attempts where they wanted to develop both a new airframe and a new engine to go with it at the same time. And it really didn't work on out because the engine had major problems, and the F-14s were basically deployed with a much older, weaker, but at least reliable engine in it. And eventually they got the new engines running again. But there could be a real problem. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Israel has announced that they still intend to destroy the S-300 sites on the ground, but it's on delay. You know, we're going to take a pause because we've had to ground the F-35 fleet. And again, the official story is there was a technical malfunction in the engine's fuel pipe. Maybe that's all it is. But didn't they test these things before putting them out in the field? Okay. All right, let's talk about the economy. Thanks, at least in part, to the plunge protection team, the stock market was massaged, and the investors got their traditional Friday happy ending. And the market opened. There was an immediate upshove, which has got plunge protection team written all over it. Then it trended down, and even got into the red briefly before there was another shove upward. So we're seeing the manipulation. It's on full display here. But Mike Maloney is out there saying it's dangerous territory for stocks. And a lot of people are already asking when the Fed put would come into play. In other words, when would the Federal Reserve step in to save the markets? Which, frankly, I think is kind of cheating. But that's the way the economic system has been treated for decades now. When they make money, they get to keep it. And when they lose money, more is just poured in on them. All right, so far this year, 83% of the companies that have gone public this year in the United States are losing money. And a full 14% of companies in the Standard & Poor's 500 can't cover the interest on their debt. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello, Glenn? Glenn, are you there? Okay. All right. Apparently we lost that call here. Article coming on out from Zero Hedge. New data is showing that the Federal Reserve is actually increasing the inequality in this country. The financial system is basically rigged to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. it's almost like what they called the Gilded Age. Where the wealthy were very ostensibly wealthy and the poor were very obviously poor. And it led to serious social stresses here. All right, looks like Glenn in Philadelphia is back, so let's go to him on the phones. Aloha, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I heard you talking about the Sea Lift Command. I've heard you mention that a few times lately. Picturing you talking about warships carrying, tanks and war material and stuff. And I'm thinking back, this is not like World War II or even in the era of Vietnam. The sky wasn't carpeted. The night sky, the sky above wasn't carpeted with satellites with high-resolution cameras and all kinds of high-tech technologies for observing and pinpointing these vessels on the oceans of the Earth.
Yep.
And you're even hearing about things like these, the things that can even scan right down to the bottom of the sea and see the topography of the seafloor and everything. So it's like, okay, if there's, and when it comes to, in other words, I always think of the aircraft carriers as being sitting ducks, but really virtually anything from a dinghy to a freighter to an aircraft carrier is very, very much at risk in today's climate with these technologies.
You're absolutely correct here. And a small little technical correction. The satellites that map the topography of the ocean floor do it by looking at the topography of the ocean surface on the theory that large undersea structures will have more gravity and pile the water up on top of them. That's how that works. But yes.
I thought torsion field imaging went all the way to the bottom or something. I thought the torsion field imaging stuff, it worked a little differently. I don't really know.
All right, I'll have to look into that. I hadn't heard that phrase before, but the last time I was looking at ocean floor topography, that was how they were doing. So it's called torsion field. Okay, I'll look at that.
Imaging. Yeah.
But you're right. The space is filled with all kinds of satellites, and if war does break out between the United States, Russia, and China, those satellites are going to be the first targets. All three nations have been working on developing anti-satellite weapons. I would imagine that probably they're trying to come up with a way to have a stealth satellite, but satellites do have to broadcast their data back to Earth, either on a radio wave or a laser beam. And if that can be tracked on, then the satellites will be destroyed. But obviously, getting those satellites will be like stage one of an actual conflict.
Well, if somebody starts blowing up satellites, you can say goodbye to near-Earth space flight. Maybe even the ISS. ISS had that problem recently. But I can just picture a bunch of space junk floating around there. These clouds of debris floating around out there that make.
We've talked about that a lot. We've talked that on this show. We've mentioned it many, many times how short-sighted the war agenda can be.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Things would happen fast. The degree of debilitation. Talk about your house of cards or glass houses. This stuff could all be very debilitating technologically worldwide in many ways. Impaired shipping. Impaired. Hey, my DirecTV doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Got taken out by the debris from a blown up spy satellite. All that kind of stuff. All right, Mike, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Glenn. We're going to let you go. And as long as we're talking about satellite and internet interruptions, apparently ICANN has announced that over this weekend, they're going to be redoing the security keys for ISPs. It's going to take 48 hours to do it, and they're warning that there may be internet outages while that's all propagating. And I hope that's all it is, and they're not just shutting down the internet so we can have a big false flag on Monday and not be able to talk about it. I hate being this cynical, but these are cynical times here. Getting on back to the economic news here, China has sent Donald Trump a message and fixes the yuan sharply weaker than expected for the third day in a row. And this is in response to the tariffs to, again, make it attractive for U.S. importers to continue to buy Chinese exports, even with the tariffs in place. See, when you're talking about international trade, the value of the currency is counterintuitive. For nations that are exporting nations, they want their currencies to be lower in value relative to the currencies of the nations they want to sell to, because then it makes it a lot easier. Nations that are buying nations obviously want their currencies to be strong. Over at the IMF, at least in Asia, their top Asia official is saying that attempts to isolate China from the world trade system will not work. And Chang Yang-ri identified 3 risks to the region's growth pace: continued escalation of trade tensions, that's a biggie, an acceleration of monetary tightening by the U.S. Federal Reserve, so it's affecting them as well as us, and a stronger than expected rise in oil prices, which is going to be exacerbated if we don't start calling off some of these wars over there in the Middle East. Okay, so Mike Pence recently made a speech regarding China, throwing out a lot of accusations and being very, very confrontational. Beijing basically came back out and rebuked him. But apparently one of the things that Pence commented on was that the best way that China could cut the trade deficit with the United States was to purchase 2 Gerald R. Ford class aircraft carriers. That would help close China's trade surplus with the United States. And the Chinese representative came back and said the problem is not that China does not buy, but the United States does not sell. And he's hit the nail right on the head. China is a manufacturing powerhouse. They make things. They make things people want to buy. And the United States, with this attitude of offshoring and outsourcing and a generation of corporate executives who were raised as MBAs with no emotional connection to the businesses they work for, just said, I don't need to get my hands dirty. We'll let people in Taiwan make this for us. And we've lost our manufacturing. Our factories are all corroded hulks dotting the landscape. And we don't have a lot to sell. Right now, our biggest seller, I think, are the weapons systems. They're certainly the biggest ticket items, but there are countries that are now turning away from that. They're refusing to buy the Patriot or THAAD, and they're going with the Russian S-400s. And nobody wants our GMO agriculture. The United States is in a real corner on this issue here. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is out there thumping on his chest, and he's now leveling threats at any country that will continue to buy Iranian oil after the second round of U.S. sanctions kick in on November 4th of this year. And he made this statement in response to India's comment that it will buy 9 million barrels of crude oil from Iran. And Reuters reported a VLCC carrying Iranian crude had offloaded it in bonded storage at the Chinese port of Dalian. So Trump is out there, we're going to sanction everybody. All these sanctions are going to do is cut us off from the rest of the world, politically and economically. And it's going to come back to haunt us. Sanctions should be used judiciously, you know, not as hanging in the holster on your hip to be pulled out at every provocation. Over in Europe, the European Central Bank has handed Italy an ultimatum: obey the EU budget rules or we won't save you. Now remember, yesterday we had reported on how the European Central Bank was taking a much closer look at the Italian banks, which are not doing all that well. In fact, the Italian banks have been in trouble for years. But basically, the ECB, their demand is tantamount to blackmail. Either the Italians agree to fall back in line and obey the EU dictates, or the central bank is going to sit back and watch as bond yields surge and the banks get into trouble with liquidity. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Extendivite, made from garlic, cayenne, bilberry, hawthorn, ginkgo biloba, valerian, and milk thistle, feeds our body with the nutrients we need to keep healthy. Just listen to what Arthur had to say.
I was just calling to tell you what a great product you have. I had used this about 10 years ago after I had congestive heart failure. And it fixed me up and got me going for the last 10 years. Lately, I've been having heart trouble again, so I placed another order because this was the only thing that ever worked. I just wanted to let you know that you have a great product. Thank you very much.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, talk about imperial hubris. On October 10th, Chris Murphy and Ron Johnson, two U.S. senators, announced the introduction of the European Energy Security and Diversification Act. And according to the two senators, it is a bill that provides new tools for the U.S. to combat, quote, malign Russian influence, end quote, in the energy sector in Europe. In other words, the U.S. legislators are looking at a bill, an energy bill for Europe. We will make you do what we want to do. I understand why they're doing that. Because of Trump's tariff war with China, Chinese refineries have stopped buying U.S. oil. And the U.S. has been building up its oil production capacity, and they've got a lot of oil to sell. And they got to sell it to somebody. And so they want to sell it to Europe, and they don't want Russia to come on in and compete for that marketplace. This goes back to that comment that was made about how the United States was willing to establish a naval blockade so that Russian oil tankers couldn't leave their ports. It's all about the money. It's all about the oil. The malign Russian influence means competition. The United States doesn't want any competition. The U.S. wants to force the rest of the world to buy American oil or American weapons or American whatever, even if it is inferior in quality and more expensive. Now, that's a lousy way to do business, and it's going to generate a lot of resentment around the world here. A lot of people still talking about the impending Sears bankruptcy, and the tone I get from a lot of the articles that I've read is that older Americans are nostalgic about Sears, especially way back in the catalog days. And if you really think about it, back then, the Sears business model actually mimicked Amazon. You shopped from your own home, and the stuff was delivered. Now, it didn't happen quickly. There was no internet. It was all done through postal mail. But you could still buy pretty much anything out of that Sears catalog. Sewing machines, buggies, guns, just be delivered to your door. And the brick and mortar physical retail stores of that age were not happy about it, but it worked for Sears and it made them into a major retailer. And maybe one of the mistakes that Sears made was going into the brick and mortar retail business itself. So what does this mean for Amazon? Well, we keep hearing about Amazon maybe wanting to get into brick and mortar retail. And they might want to learn a lesson from Sears. Okay, we're going to take a phone call. Steve Elkins, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I've had some conversations with a listener here. We were on the same page, and we were just trying to figure out why, understanding Antifa wearing the mask, which they're clearly trying to hide their identity because they're intent on breaking the law.
Yep.
Why Donald Trump has not labeled them accordingly to say that they are a domestic terrorist organization, and then use the intelligence and law enforcement to break the backs of these people that are in, or their goal is basically civil unrest. Why isn't he using everything in his disposal to break the back of these people that are intent on causing violence?
I think he probably wants to, but he's running up against what is politely called bureaucratic resistance. I mean, John F. Kennedy had to deal with the same thing. There were a lot of things he wanted to do, including smash up the CIA. And he'd issue the orders, and nothing would ever happen. He didn't. Presidents need to maintain that illusion they are in control of the government. And so there's only so much they can do. Trump can't get up there and say, hey, the FBI is refusing to listen to me, or the Department of Justice is refusing to listen to me, because then it makes him look weak in the eyes of the American people.
Yeah, it's just clearly frustrating to me to say here's an organization that's just wreaking havoc on everything, chasing people down the street, destroying, vandalizing. And if you go back to the Munich Olympics, we saw what terrorists look like with masks, hiding their identity. And that's actually what I see here. Antifa is a domestic terrorist organization. We must break their backs.
I absolutely agree. Well, the way we do that is we find a way to cut off the funding. And I think that, certainly under the USA Patriot Act, Antifa does qualify as a terrorist organization because they're using violence or the threat of violence to coerce people to change their political views. And that is a definition of terror under the USA Patriot Act. So we already have the law. What we have is a government which sees Antifa as essential to regain deep state control over the government and get rid of those pesky little people like Trump who actually think the will of the people means anything. But again, it's bureaucratic resistance. And Trump,
that's it for me, Mike. Thanks. Great show.
Trump, unfortunately, is turning out to be a very weak leader. He loves the attention. He's off in Ohio now at a rally. But he has proven himself to be a very weak and easily manipulated leader. We'll be right back after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I offer energy cleaners for sale at my website. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go to my website, thelibertyman.com, educate yourself about these marvelous healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation and getting a great night's sleep. Arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. Energy cleaners, $285, shipping included, American zip codes. You can educate yourself all about the energy cleaner right there at my website, the patent application, the wonderful testimonials. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. Now, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I have a toll-free order line, or you can order it right at my website at thelibertyman.com. The toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Thank you.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, I mean the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay, unemployment getting worse.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take another phone call from Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I wanted to call about two things, and one was what you just talked with the gentleman about Antifa.
Yes.
And that is, since we know that George Soros funds it, why can't he be arrested under not only the terrorist laws, but under the racketeering laws, the RICO statutes for organized crime? The reason, frankly, we know that he's in bed with the CIA, and they may be behind this as part of their destabilizing of Trump, but still, you figure that he could do that, right?
In theory, in a nation of laws, yes, Soros could have been arrested a long time ago for numerous violations of the USA Patriot Act.
Well, that would, I mean, that's what where I am, I would use that NDAA, indefinite detention without trial. I would draw a line or circle his name and have him disappear. It's heinous, but in this case, it would be put to good use. Mike, the other thing is, you remember back in the Cold War era, back when I was in Germany, they used to have, for reinforcement, they had something called POMCUS, which was pre-positioning of material configured to unit sets. And
Yes.
that is, they would have a mothballed armored division or a mech division or whatever. They would fly in the Big Red One, for instance, for Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. They'd climb into a mech division POMCUS set in these big warehouses they had and drive off to the border or what have you. And it didn't make sense then either, Mike, because if anybody wanted to do it, they could hit the big depots where this stuff was with persistent chemicals or nuke them or what have you, or even take them with an airborne thing. But, you know, and even they could interdict the flights of the 747s and the Airbus 300s that would be taking these guys over and back, you know, to marry up with the equipment. So it didn't even make sense 20 years ago before the satellite stuff, or 30 years ago. But, you know.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I don't know how many such pre-positioned assets are currently there along the borders of Russia. I imagine there's going to be some, and they're very well hidden. I do know that the United States has pre-positioned a lot of hardware, weapons, and ammunition in Israel, and has actually given Israel the keys to help themselves to these U.S. weapons should they feel the need.
Yeah, it's like the keys to the minibar in the hotel room. And you go there and there's no more Jack Daniels left. The Israelis have drunk it all.
Yeah.
But you know, Mike, also back in World War II, when you were talking about the shipbuilding thing, when Henry Kaiser was running the whole Liberty ship thing,
yes,
and they had a giant assembly line that might start in Kansas City and end up in the Bay Area in California, and it presupposed a couple things. The initial manufacturing, where they get all these things, they chip them and assemble them in Richmond, California, or you know, right outside of Berkeley or something, and but also a functioning and well-oiled and running railroad that we had that we really kind of don't have now as well.
Yeah, that's another area of our weakness here, and there were also assembly shipyards on the East Coast because most of the Liberty ships were actually being used for the European war.
And at one point, Mike, I think that the record was they made a Liberty ship in 72 hours.
Yep.
That's how, and that was when we were out producing the rest of the world combined and all that. And of course, we haven't been doing that. That's been dismantled since the Korean War, probably. And one more thing is, all that stuff about we also can't staff those ships. I mean, if they were U.S. flagged ships to begin with, we'd have to have U.S. flagged crews, trained crews, merchant mariners. We don't have that either, and it takes a while to train those guys.
Yeah, well, it really does, but I don't know if they're going to bring back the Liberty ships, but they were intentionally built very simple. They were supposed to be very cheap. The theory was we could build these ships faster than the Germans could sink them, and that was it. Literally, you know, more Liberty ships, and a lot of them got lost. The floor of the Atlantic Ocean is just littered with these things.
Yeah, that's right. We did do it though. We did build them faster than they could sink them, but those days are long gone, Mike. And I don't know geopolitically on a large scale military sort of situation how we can be severed from both Asia and Europe. You know, the days of a million or 8 million or 3 million plus expeditionary force anywhere in the world outside of North America, I think, are gone against a first-rate opponent.
Yeah, even the Pentagon is admitting that they're no longer able to fight a major war on two continents, which was sort of the doctrine coming out of World War II, that we always be prepared to have a major war, not just a little skirmish, but a major war, two different major wars on two continents at the same time. This gets back to something Paul Craig Roberts was writing about a couple of months ago, where he said there was serious talk going on inside Washington, D.C. about simply hauling off and launching nuclear strikes at Russia and China to cripple them first, and then it wouldn't matter how long it was going to take to get over there and gain control of the ground. Of course, the problem with that is that Russia and China are nuclear powers. Russia has almost as many nuclear weapons as the United States. China has a lot fewer of them, but each individual weapon is a lot more powerful. And just like the United States, they like to move those things around. They've gotten away from the idea of ground silos, although the United States still has the Minuteman III silos. But Russia apparently has brought back the missile train. And I don't know what China is doing, but I assume they're doing something similar.
Mike, one more thing. I looked this up the other day, and I can't remember if it was Spain or France. I think it was Spain. That Russia's economy is not a hell of a lot bigger than that of Spain. And they may be much more efficient, I'm sure, in a military sense they certainly are. But I mean, this whole thing about the Russian boogeyman, China could swamp us in a New York minute. But Russia, I'm not so sure they could. So,
I'm sorry, what do you mean by China could swamp us in a New York minute?
Well, I mean, their economy could, their manufacturing capability and economy could just they could do what we did to people in World War II.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. You're right. If China were to convert its manufacturing capacity to war, they would be a formidable enemy. And like I said, there are so many reasons for the U.S. not to be doing this. I'm starting to really think Paul Craig Roberts is right. And the thinking behind the closed doors is that there's going to be some little event to basically make it look like Russia or China has attacked us, and they'll just go with the nuclear missiles. We ended World War II with nuclear weapons. We could easily start World War III with nuclear weapons.
Scary problem. You gotta move out of there, Mike.
Soon as we can afford to do that, but I mean, if it goes to a full-blown nuclear war all over the globe, where exactly would you bother going to? You know, at least here where we're sitting, it'll be over in a split second. Okay?
Thanks, Mike.
All right, and we're going to switch over to Mateus in Canada. Aloha, Mateus. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Back in the Cuban Missile Crisis, the confrontation with Soviet Russia, I want to give an analogy, is like finding a full-grown grizzly bear in the woods, and it's not backing down, and it's life or death. And then now, the confrontation when the West is poking the democratic or republic Russia, it's like poking your hated big brother, where you kind of know that it's not life and death instantly. And everyone in the world kind of senses this, that Russia is really not the bad guy. And Russia knows it, we know it, the people know it. And the few psychopaths in the military and the government that are poking them are kind of not being taken so seriously in the way that back in the 60s, it would have been nuclear war already. And so, I mean, we can't rely on that forever. That explains why we haven't gone to full war yet, is because it's kind of like you can punch your big brother and give him a black eye. He's not going to murder you back. And
I'm not sure I would go along with that analogy, but you have hit on an important point, and that is that the U.S. anti-Russia, anti-China propaganda isn't getting a lot of traction. Most people are rejecting it, and I'm sure that that's another reason why they're trying to shut down. Let me finish, Mateus, please. I think that's probably another reason why there's this crackdown on websites, the deplatforming from social media, because we're not going with the bash Russia, bash China, war is fun, let's, go ahead and send other people's children over there. That I think that they're trying to regain monopolistic control over the flow of information to the American people. But I don't think it's going to work, because once a population knows that they have been lied to on such a scale, they're going to work to find ways to access that information. And even if all of the independent media were to vanish tomorrow, it's going to be decades before the American people trust anything this government or corporate media says.
Yeah, I agree with that. Back in the 60s, if we would have shot missiles at Russian allies, and if we would have downed a passenger plane trying to take out the president's plane and blame it on Russia, as well as some other provocations that have happened in the last handful of years, if that would have taken place back against Soviet Russia during the Cuban Missile Crisis, it would have escalated.
We came very, very close there.
Where this ridiculous comment by a representative of the United States is saying that we'll have a preemptive strike against Russia to take out those missiles. And the response from Russia literally said, we can't take this seriously. This apocalyptic scenario is so ridiculous that we can't take it seriously, which backs up this theory I've had for a while that it's almost like the hated big brother is not going to kill us back. We can say stupid things, we can threaten their destruction, and they can't really take it. So ridiculous.
Well, I think it was a calculated statement to de-escalate the situation. I think the statement was put on out there in an attempt to elicit some kind of a very angry, hostile response from Russia that could be seized on by the media to say, oh, Russia says they're going to do this and Russia says they're going to do that. But all along through all of this nightmare, Putin has shown himself constantly to be a statesman. He doesn't want these wars. He's doing his best to just calm everything down. He negotiated Syria's surrender of their chemical weapons. He's basically brought the United States to a stalemate in Syria, and he doesn't want this war. I'm sure he's dealing with the fact he may not have a choice in that matter, but he doesn't want this war, and so he told his spokesman, tone it down, just dismiss it, ridicule it, trivialize it. And by the way, what the United States was threatening to attack was the factory where these missiles are being built.
Yeah. Do I have time for a topic change, or is that it?
Actually, I need to get back to the news because I've only got about 12 minutes until Claire shows up. So thank you very much.
Have a good weekend, Michael. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, we're going to have a weekend. Take some time away from all this insanity. All right, finishing up with the economic news, the Social Security Administration has announced, ta-da, there will be a cost of living increase in 2019. So the Social Security checks will grow to keep pace with inflation. But before you start thinking about buying that champagne and caviar, don't forget that the Medicare premiums are also going up and will probably swamp that increase in the Social Security checks. Turning to immigration and the refugee status, this may be an indicator for what's going to happen in the midterm elections. There has been a poll of voters in 25 states, and the majority of voters say they want less immigration. So the open borders, let's be generous and grateful with other people's homes and let in all these illegal immigrants and let them vote, that seems to have run its course. And the American people, like the people of Europe, they're looking around at the mess all of this has caused. And they're saying, enough is enough is enough. Now, 2020 is going to be the next census, and these census questionnaires get very, very intrusive. And by the way, they're unconstitutional. The census is established by the Constitution merely to count the number of bodies in the country for the apportionment of districts. But apparently there is a case right now whether the 2020 census can ask respondents about their citizenship. And this is a very important lawsuit, because if non-citizens are being counted in the census, it's going to drastically change the drawing of districts for the House of Representatives. And so apparently Trump is pushing for that. Critics of this thing are saying, I'm sorry, this was Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross, and they're calling him crazy already. The problem is that Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has already delayed 2 depositions of Trump administration officials and wants to keep on delaying it. But yeah, I mean, the open borders people, they're trying to shove the illegal immigrants down our throats and say they're now equal with legal citizens. They're counted for the purpose of congressional representation, and by golly, they should be allowed to vote. No, only if they become citizens through the legal immigration process. This is totally out of control. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page, and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Do you or someone you know suffer from chest pain, blood pressure, cholesterol, or irregular heartbeat? Are you looking for a more natural solution to overcome these health challenges? You hear the ads all the time. If this stuff's so good, why doesn't my doctor prescribe it? That's easy. Doctors are not trained in natural medicine. Extendivite Heart Tonic does want you to be as healthy as you can be, and it really works. Take Extendivite for 6 months and your doctor will say, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop. It's working for you. Get the dependability of Extendivite. Just see how you feel in 6 months. A 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid is only $69.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822, or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slows circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio, or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far 5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're coming up on the top of the hour, and the lovely Lady Claire. And I'm going to skip on down my talking points to the computer section, if you will. As you know, Facebook has had this huge hack that stole users' information. Originally, they said it was 50 million. Now they've revised it downward, 30 million. But here is the weird thing about this story. Facebook executive Guy Rosen wrote in a blog post, and I quote, "We're cooperating with the FBI, which is actively investigating, and asked us not to discuss who may be behind this attack." Now, there are two possible interpretations of this. One is that a U.S. intelligence agency was behind the hack attack and does not wish to be publicly humiliated, or it doesn't matter who really did the hack attack. It's about to be blamed on Russia or Iran or China or North Korea or something like that. So it's an ugly situation that's out there. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip back up here and talking about immigration. Apparently the Supreme Court, and this isn't technically immigration, but the Supreme Court is set for a major showdown in a tribal sovereignty case. And the justices are going to hear Carpenter versus Murphy on November 27th. And the outcome in this case will determine whether the reservation of the Creek Nation continues to exist. And what's making it difficult for the Creek Nations is that Neil Gorsuch, whose nomination drew support in Indian country last year, has consistently bowed out of all proceedings in the matter. He's recused himself. So basically, the counter argument is the Department of Justice is arguing that the Creek Reservation was disestablished by Congress and therefore is subject to the state of Oklahoma's jurisdiction. So once again, the Native Americans got screwed over by the U.S. government. This land will be yours as long as the sun rises and the wind blows and the water flows. It'll be yours until we find something really valuable on it, and then we're going to come on in and shift you someplace else. Okay. Apparently there is a new allegation over in Great Britain. Theresa May is set to pay the DUP tens of millions of pounds more in order to ensure she obtains their backing on her Brexit plan, as these Northern Irish allies have threatened to revolt if the EU's backstop is accepted and Northern Ireland is treated differently from the rest of Great Britain. And over in France, they're still picking away at Marine Le Pen. She must have really scared the globalists with how close she got to winning. And now, of course, they're referring her for psychiatric evaluation, which is a Soviet smear tactic. And now there's a new charge of embezzling public funds. Okay, we're going to take a break here for station identification. And when we come on back, we'll have the lovely Lady Claire.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you one from Amazon.com. I just wanted you to know I saw my doctor and I laughed because he said, "I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it." I have been taking Extendivite. I had borderline high blood pressure, heart flutter, high cholesterol. I changed my diet and included Extendivite with an amazing turnaround for the better. A few months later, I had a doctor's appointment and took a stress test. I passed. No heart flutter, blood pressure was perfect. My doctor even took me off my medicine. I thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. This stuff works, and I'm so grateful for Extendivite. Thank you, Justin G. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you who are watching on the YouTube video feed, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire. And she likes to join us on Fridays with her unique perspective on the world. So what is your first story, Lady Claire?
Well, apparently, the Yemeni Houthi are getting very sophisticated in their ability to create missiles to use against the Saudi missiles and vessels. Now, what happened last week was that the Yemeni Navy, it's hard to picture a Yemeni Navy, but they targeted a military vessel belonging to Saudi Arabia off the northwestern coast of Hajj on Wednesday, reportedly killing all aboard on the vessel. The boat, which was in the Medi port, was carrying out attacks on the residential, let me use this word again, residential districts of Heran and Medi in Hajjan when it was hit. And it was confirmed to Mint Press, again, a very responsible place to go, that it had targeted the Saudi vessel with a new type of domestically manufactured missile, but did not name the missile. Now, the Saudis have not commented on this, but apparently the strike is part of a pattern of an increase or uptick in coalition airstrikes on the residential areas and other provinces. Strikes that have killed and injured more than 50 civilians. Did I say military? No. 50 civilians over the past 72 hours.
Yep.
And I'd like us all to keep focused and keep in mind that the Saudis don't really care where they're attacking whatsoever. It's schools, it's hospitals, it's busloads of children. And
they care. They care. It's a terror attack is what it is.
Okay.
You know, they're doing to Yemen what Hitler was doing to Great Britain with the V-1 Buzzbomb and the V-2 ballistic missile. They just rain down random strikes, killing civilians, trying to pressure the civilians to basically abandon their government. And it didn't work in Great Britain, and it's certainly not working here.
No, the Yemenis seem to be very resourceful. And the Butcher of Yemen, who is also known as Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or in my language, the Butcher of Yemen, and his minions will continue to argue that until they are blue in the face, Mike, the killing of civilians, particularly infants, children, women, and the medically fragile elderly, is just perfectly justified. And I would like everyone who listens to our show and watches it, particularly if you are a veteran or an offspring of a veteran. My dad enlisted in World War II. I would like to politely remind President Trump that collective punishment of a people is a war crime. And by enabling the Saudi slaughter of this genocide, the U.S. government has chosen to become a war criminal government.
Can you get the irony where the U.S. government is investigating genocide in Myanmar and enabling genocide in Yemen?
Yeah, and I will tell all of our people out there listening and watching, for as long as I can breathe as a Christian pacifist activist, I am going to continue to witness to this slaughter in Yemen and hold my government accountable for its horrific involvement and enabling, which has caused the fighting to go on for so long after it should have ended via a diplomatic solution. But,
Well,
certain elements. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, again, the diplomatic solution is the people of Yemen want their country back. Several years ago, the United States went on in. They had a successful regime change. They brought down Yemen's legitimate government, and they imposed a Western, internationally approved government, which is kind of absurd. The government of a nation is up to the people of that nation and nobody else's business. But the people of Yemen decided they didn't like their foreign puppet rulers, and they basically drove them out of all the government buildings. At one time, they were actually holding their meetings in a used car carrier ship down in the harbor.
Whoa.
And so the U.S., of course, doesn't want to let one of its conquered provinces slip away because it sets a bad example for all the other conquered provinces.
Yes,
if Yemen can do it, we can do it. So using the Saudis as a proxy, they've gone back in, and what this war is really all about is pounding down on the Yemen people to send a message. Once you have a U.S. puppet ruled puppet government, you learn to love it and you accept it, or really, really bad things will happen to you.
Or face the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, this was how the Roman Empire responded to efforts by their provinces to break free of Roman control. They'd go on in, slaughter a bunch of civilians, burn down a bunch of stuff, and say, maybe you'll learn this time.
Yep. But it's interesting also on an historic note to mention or to ask the question, well, how many names were on the ballot the last time the Yemenis were allowed to vote? One, that of al-Hadi. That was it. Is this choice? Is this democracy? Is this bringing a good version of the Pax Americana to the Middle East? And my response is, heck no.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that the United States has engaged in over 50 attempts at regime change since the end of World War II, along with a lot of flat-out military incursions. And always we're told, we're bringing democracy to those people, or we're saving those people from a cruel tyrant. And of course, none of these countries the U.S. has gone into ever actually wound up with a democracy. They wound up with a dictator. Iran in 1953 overthrew the government of Mohammad Mossadegh and put in the Shah of Iran. Same thing with Chile in 1973, brought down the government of Allende and put in the dictator Pinochet. And back in 2009, which was the last time they tried to regime change Iran, they had the son of the Shah poised in the wings. He was going to come on back in and just pick up where everything left off in 1979.
Wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Yes.
Oh, do we have a shout out?
Yeah, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So,
I'd like to go a little bit into this Saudi crown prince's image, because apparently the PR guys around him have had to be very careful, because he is known to be mercurial in his decisions, violent. When he took the throne, he did a shakedown. Remember that? Of some of the most wealthy people in the country. Well, you can get out of Dodge if you have like 30 or 40 million to hand me for the coffers.
No, it wasn't getting out of Dodge. He locked them all up in a hotel and said, you know, there's an exit fee. And it was, you know, it was a very ruthless thing to do. And I keep hearing that King Solomon is actually having second thoughts about having made him the crown prince.
As well he should. And but one of the things that bothers me or concerns me about President Trump is his two BFFs in the Middle East, and that would be Prince bin Salman and Bibi Netanyahu. It's like I look at these two characters and I think, Mr. President, perhaps you need to be a little bit more choosy about your friends. But here's what they all have in common: money, power, and the ability to act in an absolutely, completely immoral way that doesn't come back at them.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm wondering why such a fuss has been made over this journalist, Khashoggi. And I'm not trying to minimize his suffering and his death, but there are so many people that are being imprisoned and tortured and killed that never make the front page of the newspapers. Why this one? At a time when the United States is in dire need of Saudi Arabia to deal with Yemen and eventually with Iran, why poke and prod them over this issue? We know how tightly controlled the corporate media is. This story could have easily have been made to go away.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if Israel had anything to do with it.
Let's see. From Israel's point of view, well, there's no question that this gentleman walked into the Saudi consulate in Turkey. And why Saudi Arabia would do something like this at Israel's request, knowing it was going to be a public relations nightmare, it's kind of hard to understand. But again, looking at how brutal Crown Prince bin Salman has been with his own people, it is entirely possible that he just said, yeah, grab this guy, he's a critic, we're going to make an example out of him, and just ride out the storm.
Yeah. I would also like to, speaking about military developments, the U.S. military is working on, drumroll please, mine control for drones. The U.S. Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, I believe it's called,
Yes.
are working on implants that allow an operator to simultaneously control with their mere thoughts up to 3 unmanned aerial vehicles. Gee, where could that go wrong? Michael, I knew you'd have a comment about
The
this.
first time somebody drops a hot cup of coffee in his lap.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. And also, they're talking about technology which could one day lead to the direct interface between human beings and UAVs.
Well, I can understand what the thinking is behind this, because when you work a control or turn a button or turn a switch, it takes up a finite amount of time. And clearly this is a means of tightening up that command loop. So thought drone, and it's going to be able to fight a lot more quickly. Because we're not too far away from the point where drones will no longer be used for just surveillance or launching rockets and bombs, but they will actually dogfight each other.
How long do you think that's going to take?
I would imagine it's already in development.
Okay.
Because it is the next logical step.
I found this in Global Research. Again, another really excellent place to take a look. And also, if you haven't started, please think about reading the foreign press in English.
Yes.
I get more reading from EN, Fars News,
Yep.
or dear, I'm blanking on it now.
Okay, well,
Zero Hedge.
we actually
Yeah.
did touch on this briefly, but I noticed your version actually has the name of the document. It's a 146-page document released by the Pentagon titled Assessing and Strengthening the Manufacturing and Defense Industrial Base and Supply Chain Resiliency of the United States. So the Pentagon does understand right now we don't have the sea lift or airlift capacity to really mount a major war. But hey, they're just going to take more money away from the American people and just build all that stuff up, no matter how much of other people's money they're going to have to spend.
Absolutely. And we find Monsanto, which is now Bayer, which has been absorbed by the Borg of Bayer. Monsanto is seeking to reverse the 289 million Roundup verdict, as we have just thousands of similar lawsuits pending. And I am hoping that that judge cannot be bought or even rented for that matter.
Yes.
I think that the studies are there. I think the science is there, no matter how much Monsanto and Bayer are going to push against it. What
Well,
do you think are the odds, honey?
I think the odds are unfortunately, sadly, very good for Monsanto because this isn't science, this is politics. And I think what's going to happen, and I've already heard that Monsanto is making the case that this groundskeeper failed to show malice on the part of Monsanto, which is what justifies the high punitive damages number. So what Monsanto is hoping is that portion of the award will be thrown out and it'll be back down to just the damages amount to cover his medical bills and burial expenses. But I'm one of those people who thinks that Monsanto didn't need to have malice demonstrated. we know that Monsanto has been aware for a very long time these products are dangerous, and they continue to sell them. That's the malice right there.
Right. And one thing I'm rather surprised that this gentleman's plaintiff's person didn't research and use at the trial was the research of Seralini, that French researcher who had his paper published. He had it retracted and then finally had the retraction retracted.
Yeah.
No, but if anyone is listening who knows anything about this case and knows who the plaintiff's attorney was, if you can get them that Seralini research before this thing is decided, I think it could be a nail in Monsanto's coffin, and well deserved.
Well, no, because see, they did succeed in making the case that these chemicals are harmful. As you said, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence to that effect. The issue in Monsanto trying to undo this huge verdict is whether they acted with malice or not. And if they cannot be shown to have acted with malice, then a large portion of the settlement, the fine, will be erased here.
Yeah. Well,
Can I do something here real
sure.
quick?
Of course.
All right. I think things will be just a little bit better if I do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
We have read
Kidneys.
recently in globalresearch.ca the Chinese Navy has deployed upgraded H-6 bombers that carry additional anti-ship missiles. And this is important to me because it has been proven throughout the years, and especially now, that because of the great coziness between defense industry professionals and the politics of this country, they have been allowed to deliver weapons that are obsolete upon delivery, that don't do what they're advertised to do, and just with these constant upgrades that go for money and money and money and more money. And my question is not, well, why has the Chinese military been able to create this? Why
With
has the
much less
United,
money.
yeah, with much less money? Something is extremely wrong here, and I think I'm very safe in saying there is a toxic relationship between the military-industrial complex and the people who sign off on buying our weapons.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. Part of it is the very long design cycle, which just burns up money like crazy. Do you know that the F-35, they started that program 20 years ago?
Oh, my heavens.
And it's only just now getting into the air. And I might add,
barely.
crashing.
Yes.
They're already less than certain the stealth is actually going to work. We already know it won't work against radars operating at lower frequencies. And we had a caller into the show a little earlier who said the reality is that in a conflict with Russia and China, with all the satellites that are overhead looking down, anything sitting on the water is going to be a sitting duck.
Yeah.
And some of these new anti-ship missiles like the Silkworm, they're very hard to defend against. And we may be looking at a U.S. military that is more bark than bite. It looks impressive. The carriers are really large, but as we can see with the Gerald R. Ford, they've got problems. The F-35 has problems. I mean, Israel is now flying it on actual combat missions.
Yeah, but they grounded it with the others who
they grounded it
with
the
the
others
U.S.
today.
Yeah.
But it's still not considered fully mission capable because the software for the onboard cannon is not ready. They still can't get the integrated, what they call the glass airplane vision system working. This is in their helmet. There are video screens. And all around the camera, there are these video sensors where the pilot can look around even through where there is there's solid metal, and he's going to see what's on the other side. They can't get that to work up.
Right.
Apparently, the networked radar between flights of F-35s is having problems. And its biggest problem is it can't distinguish the correct number of targets being reported by all of the radars on those F-35s.
That's fatal, though.
It's a mess. It is really a mess. And I'm with you. I mean, we were talking about these stories about how Sea Lift Command has very few ships relative to World War II, how the U.S. Navy has so few ships they may not be able to do convoy protection duty. And the first thing I think of is, where has all that money gone? And I'm not talking about the trillions that simply vanished without a trace into the Pentagon. I'm talking about all the trillions that went into the Pentagon. What happened to it all? Well, we know that these things are expensive, like the F-35. They love big price tags. It makes them feel good. But the reality is that China and Russia have been preparing for World War III while the U.S. sort of polishes World War II. And it's another reason why I think it is going to be a huge mistake to get into this war. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid-150s over the 80s to the mid-130s over mid-80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Attention RBN listeners. Dr. Ignatius Piazza, founder of Front Sight Firearms Training, and Fate have come together to allow RBN to run another fundraiser till the end of the year. We didn't really expect this opportunity, but thankfully it's here and running as you hear this. We've set a goal of 500 donations by the end of the year, which averages around 6 per day, 7 days a week. When you realize all the folks listening to RBN all hours of the day and night, we think our goal is realistic and extremely critical to keep RBN on the air. If everybody listening will seriously assess their ability with firearms and then take advantage of this opportunity, we feel our goal is very conservative. Please take the time to look over Front Sight's website to get an idea of an amazing facility and the world-class training that's going on there. If this interests you, you likely will have like-minded friends that would like to know. Tell them. If for some reason some listeners are not personally interested, consider sons and daughters, close friends, nieces or nephews, top valued employees, inform club members, share the opportunity with police and fire departments. It's not too early to plan Christmas presents for special people. This fundraiser has come at an extremely critical time for RBN because the dire need for equipment upgrades. We're running on the spare tire currently with no money to fix a flat, and the fuel gauge is bouncing on E. This is one of the most valuable ways you can help RBN financially because you get Commander lifetime membership value that is 50 times your donation and can be passed on forever. How many times during life do you get to leave a legacy? See more details and contact info on our webpage, republicbroadcasting.org, and thank you.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
Oops.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And Claire was saying oops over something that's coming in over the Fox News. Apparently, the Pentagon is revealing a cyber breach involving their travel records, who's going where, and from there we can figure out what they're trying to do. So what is your next story?
Well, the next story actually happened late last night. Apparently, Antifa attacked the GOP headquarters in New York City and warned it was merely the beginning. The building, which I believe is an historically important building, was vandalized. Windows were broken, spray painting, and more. Okay?
Yeah, we did talk about this a little earlier in the show, and this actually brings back memories of the sort of violence, brown shirt tactics that were seen in Germany leading up to World War II. And it's very alarming to see it here in the United States. Now, we had one caller who called on in and said, why can't these people be arrested? Actually, they could, because they fit the definition of a terror group as defined under the USA Patriot Act, using violence or threat of violence to coerce a change in one's political views. So,
and, you know, I have expressed to Mike publicly and privately that there were moments when I wished that we were maybe on the mainland, could do a little traveling, could see our families, for heaven's sakes.
Yes.
But right now, in a state that is preponderantly Democratic, I feel a lot safer here than I would on places in the mainland.
Yeah, that's true. There's still a lot of spirit of aloha here, although the drivers are getting a little crazy these days.
Yes.
We're not seeing this kind of behavior here in Hawaii.
And that's a thank heaven, because I have a friend, well, you know her, Debbie, at church, right?
Yeah.
Now, Debbie's geopolitical point of view is very different from mine. And yet I know that we could stand with a cup of coffee, sit, eat some fruit, and talk about why these differences occur. And I'm not trying necessarily to convince someone that I am right and everyone else is wrong. I want to learn from the people I talk with about how they came to that thought process and how they came to that opinion.
Well, we need more of that. We need more of that. Right now, things are so polarized. We have these fanatics on both sides. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, when was the last time you saw a conservative spray paint a building?
I can't remember it.
Yeah,
you know.
There was an article that was out there on whatreallyhappened.com posted by a member saying that this interviewer was offering, I think it was like $100 to liberals to identify a conservative who had worked to silence a liberal speaker. And of course, none of them could collect that money.
No.
But, you know, the liberals are just being driven into being this totally fanatical group of, I believe, I don't need to talk, I don't need to understand, I know I'm right, and I'm going to back that up with violence.
And the other thing is that they don't believe critical thinking should be a part of the process. And there, to me, is where they, the more frenzied ones, are absolutely up a tree with no place else to go. Because unless you inject that element, okay, let's fact find, let's put things together, see where the data converges.
Oh, no, but that only serves the white male patriarchy, heterosexual things, you know.
Oh? Well,
there are actually liberal academics out there, you know, trying to say that rational thinking only serves the white elites. And maybe that's because we do so much of it. I don't know.
I have never considered myself elite in any way, shape, or form. I'm a working stiff. You know, I get up, I do my marketing, and do my music, and do my posts, and but yeah, I'm just a working stiff, like many of the people are who are viewing this and who listen to this, and who need very desperately to be listened to by this government.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the next thing I have is that you talked about this earlier.
Just briefly, we were talking about it. Go ahead with what you've got, and then I'll add a comment.
Yeah, and apparently with 90,000 jobs at stake, bankrupt Sears may shut down as many as 400 stores. And they're going to do it not in a rechargeable Chapter 11. They are being pushed for a Chapter 7 liquidation due to their concerns that could be further primed by secured debt. And it's apparently a nasty place for anyone who was invested in Sears and thought that they were going to thrive.
The good news is, after negotiations, the creditors have backed off a total Chapter 7 liquidation.
Okay.
And they're going to go ahead with a Chapter 11 restructuring.
Okay.
And Sears is expected to file on Sunday. And to fund operations during the holiday shopping season, negotiators are discussing a loan of about $300 million to $500 million.
Wow.
This is important because Sears suppliers have not been getting paid.
Yeah.
And it's a funny thing about manufacturers. If you're not paying the bill, they stop sending you things to sell.
Yes, definitely. And I hope it gets sorted out for Sears, but it's almost as
I
though,
do too,
yeah,
because it's iconic. Anyway,
Yeah.
we need to take another break for commercials.
Alrighty.
And we'll be back after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. You will hear this offer only on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75%. Dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat, very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, my heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And a little bit of good news. We're getting word out of the Senate Judiciary Committee just now that Hillary Clinton has given up her security clearance in the wake of the scandal over her handling of secret information on her private, unsecured email server. Now, they're probably spinning this to make it look like Hillary was very agreeable to this. I don't think
No.
for 1 minute.
No.
I'm sure that the Senate Judiciary Committee had to use a pair of vice grips to get that security clearance card out of her
Yes,
hand here.
yes, definitely.
But she's lost her security clearance, and frankly, she shouldn't have still had it.
Yeah.
She's a private citizen,
Mhm.
and I don't understand why she was allowed to keep her security clearance. Because the way it works, and I know because I've had a security clearance myself in the dim, dark past, is you get hired, you get vetted, you go through the process of getting the security clearance, you do the work that you are doing. When the work is done, you surrender all of your classified materials and your security clearance is immediately revoked. That's the way it normally works. So a small victory, and I'm sure in the long run, Hillary doesn't really care. My big concern is all of this alarming talk that she may try and run again in 2020.
Mhm.
Okay.
And speaking of leaked and loose data, I think all of you remember, if you did go to see it, the movie The Purge, right?
Yes.
And there was thank you. There was actually, I think there's a TV series out this month called
Yeah,
The Purge.
Yeah. Can't
Well-
keep a good franchise down.
No, and but this time there is a purge, and it's going out online. Now, this is something that was leaked from Google to Breitbart, and it's a document that advises to police instead of content,
Police
the tone,
instead of content.
in the shift toward total censorship.
Yeah, and what Google is trying to do is put out a public image that they're targeting people who are abusive and nonsensical. But the reality is, we know that this is an attack on conservatism.
Yes,
and
definitely.
timed definitely to aid the liberals in the midterm elections.
Mhm.
So, and this is why so many people are shifting away from Google to DuckDuckGo, which is just really taking off. It's my search engine of choice right now, and I recommend it highly to you. And apparently they've attracted some investment funding as a serious challenge to Google's primacy in search engines. So I encourage everybody, stop using Google. They're gonna filter content. You will see at Google only what Google wants you to see.
Absolutely. And this was very, very interesting. This was Sputnik News, and I urge you again to read it in English, because if you want to find out what our government is doing around the world with foreign governments, read foreign press in the English language.
Because you're not going to see it on American corporate
Oh,
media.
heck no.
I mean, I don't remember the last time I saw a story about Syria on the corporate American media. We've seen nothing about Yemen. I mean, they did make a big deal about that pastor being released today, which was a good thing. But apparently he was actually convicted of terror links going back to the failed coup d'etat against Erdogan. But as a favor to the United States, his sentence was time served, and they sent him back home. But as far as these other war zones, Afghanistan, nothing in the corporate media at all.
Just moving a little bit.
Okay.
And speaking of war zones, the UN has reported that over 8,000 Afghan civilians have been killed in 2018, mostly not the militants, not the people who are shooting at our troops, but women and children.
Well, that'll keep them from growing up to become Taliban terrorists.
You know.
Here's the reality about what's going on. Back in 2001, the Taliban was all but eradicated, and Afghanistan was under control of the installed puppet government of Hamid Karzai, El Presidente de UNOCAL. But over all this time, and despite the presence of all this American military and hardware, the Taliban have been gaining ground. And that's why Trump is saying we got to send more troops in there, we got to send more weapons. The Taliban have already won the hearts and minds of the Afghani people.
Yeah.
The Afghani people don't like foreign puppet rule any more than any other country. And so they're aiding the Taliban, they're siding with them. And the Taliban, I'm sure they've been described as terrorist groups someplace. The word Taliban actually means students, because when the Shah of Iran fell from power in 1979, the move against him had originated in the colleges and universities. So these students got together and said, we'd better put together a government. And that was it. And the first thing they did is they shut off the flow of opium. If you were caught with an opium poppy in Afghanistan under the Taliban, they would cut your hand off. A little draconian, but it worked. And as soon as the United States went in to Afghanistan, the poppies were blooming and the opium was flowing into the United States. Very cheap opium, which the pharmaceutical companies gobbled up and made into pills and incentivized doctors to write prescriptions for, which is why we now have a massive opioid crisis in the United States of America, because for those of you who haven't figured it out yet, opium is addictive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But pharmaceutical companies love products that are addictive. Yeah, repeat trade, guaranteed flow of income here.
Yeah.
There's very little moral difference between the giant pharmaceutical companies and the guy down on the street corner selling the weed.
I would agree. I would agree. And this sort of twisted logic of if we don't leave Afghanistan, we cannot be seen as having lost.
Well, that's another aspect of it. The U.S. war agenda, as revealed by General Wesley Clark, was to basically either directly conquer or regime change all of the oil-producing nations in the Middle East in order to basically guarantee U.S. domination of the world's oil markets and the restoration of the petrodollar. But when you are conducting multiple wars and you've got a plan to run out 8 or 9 wars in a row, the first one you lose basically pulls the rug out from under the whole shebang. People lose confidence. People are saying, we've had enough. So even though we are, in fact, actually losing in Afghanistan, they're going to keep sending more of your children and more of the weapons paid for with your tax dollars into Afghanistan to make it look at least like it's a standstill, which now appears to be the strategy in Syria.
Yeah.
So the United States, from the point of view of maintaining the war agenda, cannot pull out of Afghanistan, cannot pull out of Syria.
And it's one of the most, pardon me, one of the most stupid things I think that this government has ever done.
Well, again, look how long they hung on in Vietnam. I mean, it was obvious the United States was losing, but they didn't want to be seen as losing. And it wasn't until they were literally driven out, you know, with like a dozen Marines hanging underneath a UH-1B helicopter taking off from the embassy at Saigon.
Yeah. I remember that. That was an iconic image.
We may have to see that again. We might have to see the U.S. military literally driven out of a country before the U.S. is going to say, well, yeah, we kind of lost that one. But we did lose in Vietnam, and we never won in Korea, which is why I think the U.S. is digging its heels in over this talk about ending the Korean War. Because if they end the Korean War, technically it's another loss for the United States. They didn't defeat the enemy. We didn't impose our will on this country. And, you know, the North Koreans do remember how badly they suffered at the hands of the U.S. military. At one point, General MacArthur wanted to drop nuclear weapons on North Korea.
Yikes.
Yeah.
You're serious?
I'm serious.
Whoa.
That was one of the areas that got him into trouble with Harry Truman, who eventually, of course, fired him.
Yeah, yeah. Getting back to our own country, apparently, police facial recognition body cams can be edited by law enforcement.
Ooh, how wonderful.
And there's nowhere that one can walk when an officer with a body cam comes towards you. They will have scanned your face against 50 million person database and knows if you have any outstanding tickets, warrants, etc. And apparently police across this country will be using something called Vigilant Solutions or Video Badge body armor.
Body cams.
Yeah, with which to identify everyone. And it's identified as wearable security. But how do we prevent police from editing footage in their video cam, which holds them harmless and indemnifies them when they may have been the bad guys? Mike, can you explain that to me?
Well, they're probably looking at an editing solution because it's becoming very obvious that every time a police officer does do something wrong, we get the usual story, oh my goodness, the body cams weren't working,
right,
or they
surprise,
malfunctioned,
surprise, yeah.
or you know, the data got corrupted. And it's just happened so many times. I think there needs to be a law that says body cam footage is evidence, and attempts to edit that video, that's evidence tampering.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think we're probably going to get to that situation where, in point of fact, the police, they'll just reshape the videos to support their side of the story.
Yeah. I can imagine that being done.
Or the camera will have malfunctioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are very lucky here on Oahu. Any professional encounter we've had with the police, they've been very polite and very much lawful, you know.
I don't think we've had a professional encounter with the police since Kaneohe.
I don't think we have either. That's been a lot of years ago.
Now, we have a neighbor
Yes.
who's HPD and a good friend and really very, very nice. So.
Yeah. So I know that there are good cops out there. And my wonderful brother was also a law enforcement officer who took it by the book and who did it right. So,
well,
there
I
are
had
good
a
people
half
out
brother, and I was scared to death of the fact that he was out there with a gun and a badge. But eventually he suffered an injury and went into another line of work.
Okay. Apparently, and this struck me as odd for a couple of reasons. Theoretically, for the military, the best time for people to enroll is between 17 to 24, prime years to join the Army. But one general is saying that they have had to disqualify 30% of the people who would like to apply and become a military person because of their weight.
Yes, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
Well, we know there's an obesity problem in this
Yeah.
country, and much of it is related to all the chemicals, additives in food that make you want to eat more.
Yeah.
Which makes more money for the food corporations, but now it's coming on back as a threat to our national security.
Yeah.
So if you are we know there's a draft coming.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to evade the draft without technically breaking the law, start eating lots of fast food right now. Chips,
dear.
dips,
Oh, dear.
you know,
Oh, dear.
big
But-
bottles of soda.
No. But the other thing that struck me about this article in reading it was that it doesn't look as though the U.S. military sees any other way but war in which to win ideologically against countries which may have different agendas. And that struck me also, that there is no other thing than war.
This is
to
not
make this happen.
ideological. This is all about, economics. It's
Yes.
about controlling the oil. It's about controlling the pipelines.
Yeah.
It's about controlling what currencies natural resources are being sold for.
Yeah.
There's no ideology here.
Yes, okay.
It's basically the United States has become a 21st century warlord.
Yeah. Well, any warlord in any war has to make sure that all the moving parts are working correctly and intelligently. And right now, forgive me, folks, and particularly those of you who are in our military, I do believe in a strong military, but I also believe that the force that you offer should only be used with extreme discretion and not like a hammer.
Well, it's interesting they call it the Department of Defense because the United States has not actually been attacked by a foreign army. I mean, during World War II, Japan succeeded in getting some balloon bombs across the Pacific and started a forest fire up in Oregon.
Yeah, I remember that.
But Canada hasn't attacked us since, I think it was the War of 1812.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mexico hasn't attacked us ever since General Santa Anna surrendered. But we're always attacking everybody else around the world. And so it ought to be called the Department of Offense.
Yeah.
And it's always about
agree.
control of resources. And it's never ideology. Ideology is what's sold to you to make you think that it's a moral and right and just war.
To support the agenda.
To support the agenda.
Yeah. From that, I would like to go into something where I just couldn't make this up. This is about Walmart, and we are occasionally Walmartians, once in a while. There
Good word.
is a type of olive. We have friends on the mainland who love that type of olive, and we can get them there. But Walmart has done something very strange. It has received a patent to monitor your biometric data, pulse, and location from the sensors on a shopping cart handle. And they recently applied for the patent. It can track your heart rate, palm temperature grip, and how fast the cart is being pushed. The patented system and method for a biometric feedback cart handle was published back in August, and it details a cart with sensors in it that would then send data to a server. And that server would notify store employees to check on individual customers. Like maybe they're thinking about shoplifting.
Well, maybe. I mean, if you've got the heart rate, palm temperature, you could tell if they're under excessive stress. And certainly nobody wants the cart to be pushed too fast. But my sense of it is they're going to be exploiting this to try and have Walmart employees approach customers with a sales pitch. Okay.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, that they're going to try and detect something about the customer with all these sensors where they're going to be approached and somebody's going to say, you might want to think about buying this. For example, if their palm temperature is way up, they may have somebody who's medically qualified come on over and say, why don't you come and, you know, sit with our equivalent of the Minute Clinic or something. But it is a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
And I don't speed, either with a shopping cart or with our car.
Yes. No,
In
Michael
fact,
is...
the older I get, I'm turning into a pokey driver.
Michael is the gentlest, most considerate driver you could ever imagine, and usually getting passed on the left and the right by people who just believe that speed is the need.
Well,
you know?
I'm trying to blend in with the traffic, but if you do that, you know, you can get an obstruction of traffic ticket. You know, for following the speed limit.
Yeah.
And if you blend with the traffic, you can get a speeding ticket. It's a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got to take a break for commercials.
All right.
Back with the last segment of our program after these few words.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
The First Amendment in the Bill of Rights limits the government's power by ensuring freedom of speech and preserving the rights of the people. Every day that passes, our rights gradually slip away. It's time to take a stand and let the government know we're tired of losing our rights. LibertyStickers.com will allow you to express your rights and allow millions of people to see you stand up for what you believe in. LibertyStickers.com carries the largest selection of bumper stickers online, ranging from political to humorous, and is your #1 source for Ron Paul for President stickers. As always, you can find your favorite stickers that protest the war and the president. Don't see what you're looking for? Liberty Stickers will custom make stickers that will let you get your message across for all Americans to see. Go to libertystickers.com and see pre-made stickers that will get everyone talking. That's libertystickers.com or call 877-873-9626. Liberty Stickers, the world's most dangerous stickers.
Some have maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Final segment on this Pauhana Friday program. And Claire, what is your next story?
This is from the Tel Aviv Department of You Can't Actually Make This Stuff Up. Israel has fined 2 New Zealand women $18,000 for urging Lourdes, a very prominent entertainer right now, concert boycott. And an Israeli court has ordered 2 New Zealand women to pay damages from harming the artistic welfare of 3 Israeli teens after the pop star Lourdes canceled a planned performance in Tel Aviv. And it apparently is the first use of a 2011 Israeli law allowing for civil lawsuits of anyone who encourages a boycott of Israel.
The good news is it's not enforceable.
Yeah.
They're out there just, it's just more of the Israel propaganda. We're victims.
Yeah.
We're victims. Oh, my goodness, we're being treated so unfairly here.
And I would like to wish that artists of substance and credibility, if they are asked to visit Tel Aviv by a promoter, will say, I can't until the horrifically apartheid system gets lifted from the Palestinians, and good luck and goodbye.
See, here's the thing. Israel is using the prominence of these celebrities to bolster its public image. Israel isn't bringing these rock stars to Israel because they like the music. They're basically trying to wear the skin of the leopard, as it were, and say, we're a cultural center of the world. We have all of these very famous people coming here, and that's why they always react so negatively when there is any musician or orchestra or anybody who says we really don't want to do that, because Israel desperately needs to make itself look as positive to the world as possible right now. They're failing miserably. Let's be honest about it. I don't know who the Israeli government uses as a public relations firm, but they're being paid way too much, in my opinion.
And that reminds me of another story, which to me was always very heartfelt. Daniel Barenboim, the conductor, Argentinian-based, this man really struck me as a gentleman for peace, because when he auditions students, he will take one Israeli and one Palestinian student to work through a summer music program. These kids get to know each other as people.
Yep.
And I think that is one of the most brilliant things in the world that he has done. Now, I'm not knocking his conducting or his performance, which are stellar, but I'm just saying that this man has had the courage, the moral courage, to attempt to do something about that. It's the same as an organization, a church in Connemara, where Protestant and Catholic kids are brought together for the summers so they don't look like the enemy when school starts again.
Well, hopefully, we're sort of past that whole Catholic, Protestant, let's kill the other guys and tear down their idols and everything. But there's always fanaticism in the world, and right now we're seeing it in Israel. Israel's schools teach Israeli children to just hate and fear the Palestinians automatically. All right, there's the music. Time for us to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of wonderful things to share with you. Take what you learn here and share it with everybody that you know. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to mobilize the conservative vote for the midterms and tell everybody to start changing their social media if they want to find out the truth about what's going on. If each of you tells 10 people and those 10 each tell 10, we can spread this across the entire country before the midterms hit.
It can be exponential.
Yes, it
Yeah.
can be. And so have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Aloha, America.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to